So you are using frog tape all wrong. Yes, this frog tape right here, and you're buying it because it's premium, and it says that it actually has this block technology that sort of prevents the paint from bleeding under the actual tape. But when you go to use it, you're peeling up the tape, and guess what? You get bleeding. In this video, I'm going to show you one of the secrets to using frog tape so that you can get consistently crispy, clean lines. So let's go. So I'm not going to hold the secret. Basically, it is using water. So if you're using frog tape, all you have to do is make sure that you burnish it, basically rubbing the tape down on the substrate that you're trying to mask, and then using a damp cloth with water to actually run over the actual tape. And what I think it is that when you're adding water, it kind of activates that block technology in a way to where now it's really just like getting in between the tape and the substrate so that the paint doesn't bleed underneath. But the thing is, like, nothing on this container says that you need to use water with it. I just found that out by accident when using it, and then a couple other people kind of mentioned it. And using this method is by no means 100% guaranteeing crispy clean lines. I'm going to show you a guaranteed trick later on. So what I did was set up a test on a table with a couple of squares. One, I'm going to use a damp cloth to sort of burnish it and sort of try to activate that block technology, and the other I'm going to do it without burnishing it with a damp cloth. I'm just going to use my hand to try to rub it down as much as I can, and I'm going to paint on top of this fabric called a polytab that is gessoed. So this is something that is sort of familiar with a lot of artists and painters. I took off the tape, and you can actually see from the one that I did with the damp cloth that I'm getting really good lines. There are some areas that are sort of like a micro bleeding, but it's not a ridiculous amount, and you can kind of see that's a crispy clean line in many of the areas around that square. As opposed to going to the square without the damp cloth being used on top of the frog tape, you can kind of see that there's a lot of bleeding in many of the different areas. So this is something that you would usually see if you're not using a damp cloth to actually burnish the tape to the actual canvas or the substrate that you're trying to paint on. And like I said earlier, I want to share a guaranteed method of getting really crispy clean lines, and the magic to that is using matte medium. Matte medium is basically acrylic polymer without the pigment. So basically think of it as paint without the actual color in it, so it dries transparent. And I did another shape in between the two so that you can see the difference between using matte medium and using just frog tape with water and without water. So to use matte medium, all you want to do is just lay down that tape and then put matte medium all around the different corners that you're going to paint over. And then once you have the matte medium dry, you want to make sure it's dry to the touch. All you have to do is just paint whatever you want to paint on top of whatever color you're using, and then once that dries, you can take off that tape. And when you see that the matte medium is filling in all those different cracks and different sort of spaces and voids underneath the tape that you really couldn't see with a naked eye, basically it's going to be super clear, and what is left is no space for that paint to sort of go in those spaces. Now when you take off that tape, you have crispy clean lines everywhere. I even did this on the wall because a lot of us will do murals in buildings, and this wall basically is a wall that I paint over a couple times, so it's not a perfectly smooth wall, and no one gets a perfectly smooth wall all the time. So this is the perfect sort of test area. So I basically did the same test on my wall, and you can see the results of both. On the right side with the frog tape without the damp cloth, there's a lot of bleeding around the edges, and when you look to the left, I have the square that's frog tape with a damp cloth, a lot of clean lines. Basically when you stand back, you can't see any of the bleeding. And then when you look below at the shape I used the matte medium on, there's a huge difference because even up close you can see that it is a crispy clean lines. There's hardly any bleeding anywhere on the actual shape, and that is something that you want, especially for artists that are doing work where the viewer is going to get really close up on it. So hopefully this video helped out in terms of showing you a trick to actually improve the performance of frog tape and a guaranteed method of you using matte medium to get crispy clean lines regardless of what tape you're using. Make sure you share this video with anyone going through this dilemma of trying to get clean lines. That really will help me out. Make sure you comment in the comment section below if you have any questions, and I will see you next time. Peace.